Cleaning lady Maria Santos was emptying the trash in the boardroom of Titan Industries when CEO Jonathan Pierce burst in with his legal team, waving a thick contract. This merger document is so complex that if anyone in this building can actually read and understand all 800 pages, I'll personally give them $1 billion, he laughed arrogantly to his lawyers. These people can barely read a street sign, let alone corporate law. Maria quietly continued her work as Jonathan tossed the contract on the table dismissively. Go ahead, try to read it, he mocked, pointing at Maria. I'll wait. What Jonathan didn't know was that Maria had graduated magna cum laude from Harvard Law School before circumstances forced her into cleaning jobs to support her family. As she picked up the contract and began reading fluently, Jonathan's laughter died in his throat. Oh, you said $1 billion, sir, Maria said calmly after finishing the document an hour later. I'll take that contract now. If this story resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Jonathan Pierce had built Titan Industries into a $40 billion conglomerate through a combination of ruthless business tactics, strategic acquisitions, and an unwavering belief that intelligence and success were distributed along class lines. At 52 years old, he commanded one of the most powerful corporations in America from his corner office on the 68th floor of Titan Tower in downtown Chicago, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Lake Michigan and the sprawling city that he saw as his personal kingdom. The Titan Industries headquarters was a monument to corporate power and financial success, featuring imported marble from Italian quarries, custom-designed furniture by renowned architects, and artwork worth more than most people would earn in several lifetimes. Every detail had been carefully chosen to communicate wealth, sophistication, and intellectual superiority to employees, clients, and competitors who entered the building. Jonathan's philosophy about human intelligence and capability was deeply rooted in economic determinism and social Darwinism that convinced him that financial success naturally correlated with intellectual ability, while poverty indicated intellectual deficiency or personal failure. He genuinely believed that people who worked in service positions or manual labor jobs were inherently less intelligent than executives and professionals who occupied positions of corporate leadership. This worldview had been reinforced throughout his privileged upbringing in an affluent Connecticut family where domestic workers, groundskeepers, and service staff were treated as invisible or intellectually inferior. Jonathan had attended exclusive private schools, graduated from Wharton Business School, and entered the corporate world with connections and advantages that he attributed to his own merit rather than inherited privilege. His rise to CEO of Titan Industries had been facilitated by family wealth, elite educational credentials, and business relationships that provided access to opportunities unavailable to most people. But Jonathan interpreted his success as evidence of superior intelligence and capability, rather than recognition of the systemic advantages that had shaped his entire life trajectory. The corporate culture at Titan Industries reflected Jonathan's prejudices and assumptions about intelligence, capability, and social hierarchy. Executive positions were filled primarily by graduates of elite universities who shared similar backgrounds and perspectives, while support staff, maintenance workers, and service personnel were treated as interchangeable resources whose opinions and insights were considered irrelevant to business operations. Jonathan took particular pleasure in demonstrating his intellectual superiority over employees, whom he considered beneath his social and educational status. He regularly made dismissive comments about the intelligence of cleaning staff, security guards, cafeteria workers, and other service employees who kept the corporate headquarters functioning but were invisible to him as individuals with education, experiences, and capabilities. The legal document that would change Jonathan's life forever was a merger agreement between Titan Industries and Meridian Corporation, a complex international deal worth $15 billion that involved regulatory approvals in 12 countries, environmental impact assessments, intellectual property transfers, and employment protections for over 50,000 workers whose livelihoods would be affected by the corporate consolidation. The contract had been drafted by teams of lawyers from the most prestigious law firms in New York, London, and Tokyo, representing hundreds of hours of legal work by attorneys who charged upward of $2,000 per hour for their expertise in international corporate law, regulatory compliance, and cross-border mergers and acquisitions. At 847 pages, the merger agreement was a masterpiece of legal complexity that addressed every conceivable contingency, regulatory requirement, and potential dispute that could arise from combining two multinational corporations with operations spanning 6 continents and involving technologies, patents, and business relationships that had been developed over decades. The document included detailed provisions about intellectual property rights, employee benefits preservation, environmental liability allocation, regulatory compliance requirements, dispute resolution mechanisms, and financial terms that would determine the fate of billions of dollars in assets and the careers of thousands of employees whose work had built both companies into industry leaders. Jonathan had spent months negotiating the terms of the merger with Meridian's executive team, working with legal advisors who specialized in complex international transactions that required expertise in corporate law, securities regulation, tax optimization, and competitive analysis that would satisfy regulatory authorities in multiple jurisdictions. The legal complexity of the merger agreement was extraordinary even by the standards of major corporate transactions, involving cross-references between hundreds of subsections, technical definitions that required deep knowledge of industry terminology, and legal concepts that had been developed through decades of corporate law evolution and international business practice. Most practicing attorneys would have required several days to fully comprehend all the implications and interconnections within the document, while business school students and MBA graduates would have found many sections completely incomprehensible without specialized training in corporate finance, international law, and regulatory compliance. Jonathan's arrogant challenge about the document's complexity reflected his genuine belief that no one without an elite legal education could possibly understand the sophisticated concepts, technical language, and intricate legal relationships that the merger agreement contained. In his mind, the ability to comprehend such documents was a marker of intellectual superiority that naturally separated corporate executives from ordinary workers. Maria Santos represented everything that challenged Jonathan's assumptions about intelligence, education, and social hierarchy, though he had never bothered to learn anything about her background, qualifications, or personal history. To him, she was simply part of the invisible workforce that maintained the corporate environment, where important business was conducted by important people like himself. Maria had been working as a cleaning lady at Titan Industries for 3 years, arriving each evening at 6 o'clock to clean offices, empty trash bins, vacuum carpets, and maintain the spotless appearance that corporate executives expected in their workplace. Her work was thorough, professional, and performed with the attention to detail that had characterized her approach to every task throughout her life. But what Jonathan and virtually everyone else at Titan Industries didn't know was that Maria Santos had graduated magna cum laude from Harvard Law School 8 years earlier, finishing in the top 5% of her class with concentrations in corporate law, international business transactions, and securities regulation. Her academic record included publication in the Harvard Law Review, summer internships at prestigious law firms, and recognition as one of the most promising young legal minds in her graduating class. Maria's legal education had been financed through a combination of academic scholarships, student loans that still consumed a significant portion of her monthly income, and part-time work that had taught her the value of every dollar and every opportunity. She had been the first person in her family to attend college, let alone law school, and her educational achievements had been the result of extraordinary dedication and sacrifice by her entire family. Her path to Harvard Law School had begun with academic excellence in public schools in East Los Angeles, where she had been valedictorian of her high school class, despite working after-school jobs to help support her family's household expenses. Her undergraduate education at UCLA had been supported by academic scholarships and campus employment, where she had majored in political science while working 20 hours per week in the university library. The decision to attend Harvard Law School had been both a dream fulfilled and a financial burden that would affect her family for years to come. The tuition, living expenses, and opportunity costs of 3 years of legal education had required sacrifices from her parents, siblings, and extended family members who contributed whatever they could to support her educational goals. Maria's performance at Harvard had been exceptional by any measure, with grades that placed her among the top students in every class and academic honors that recognized her as one of the most capable law students the institution had produced. Her legal writing was precise and sophisticated, her analytical skills were extraordinary, and her understanding of complex legal concepts had impressed professors who were recognized experts in their fields. Her specialty areas of study had been precisely the type of corporate law, international business transactions and merger and acquisition law that would be required to understand the Titan-Meridian merger agreement. She had taken advanced courses in securities regulation, international corporate finance, cross-border transactions, and regulatory compliance that provided exactly the background necessary to comprehend the most complex aspects of the document that Jonathan was using as a prop for his intellectual superiority. Upon graduation from Harvard Law School, Maria had received job offers from several prestigious law firms that would have provided starting salaries exceeding $200,000 per year and career trajectories that could have led to partnership positions worth millions of dollars annually. The legal profession's elite firms had recognized her exceptional capabilities and were eager to recruit her talent for their corporate law practices. But life circumstances had intervened in ways that forced Maria to decline these opportunities and instead focus on immediate financial needs that couldn't wait for long-term career development. Her father, Carlos Santos, had been diagnosed with late-stage cancer during her final semester of law school, requiring expensive medical treatments that weren't fully covered by his limited health insurance. The medical bills, combined with lost income from Carlos's inability to continue working construction jobs that had supported the family for 2 decades, created a financial crisis that required Maria's immediate earning capacity rather than the long-term investment that a prestigious law firm position would represent. Additionally, Maria's younger brother Diego had been accepted to medical school but needed financial support to pursue his education without accumulating debt that would prevent him from specializing in pediatric medicine, his chosen field for serving underserved communities like their own neighborhood in East Los Angeles. The combination of medical expenses for her father and educational support for her brother meant that Maria needed immediate income rather than the delayed gratification that came with establishing a legal career at a prestigious firm. The entry-level positions at elite law firms required long hours and provided little flexibility for family responsibilities that had become urgent priorities. Maria had made the difficult decision to postpone her legal career in order to work multiple jobs that would provide the immediate income necessary to support her family's medical and educational needs. She worked as a paralegal during the day, cleaned offices during the evening, and provided tutoring services on weekends to students preparing for law school admission tests. The work was exhausting and emotionally challenging for someone who had spent 7 years preparing for a legal career that had been postponed indefinitely. But Maria approached every job with the same dedication and professionalism that had characterized her academic achievements. She viewed her current circumstances as temporary sacrifices that would eventually allow her to return to legal practice while having fulfilled her family obligations. Working as a cleaning lady at Titan Industries had been one of several evening jobs that Maria had taken to maximize her earning capacity while maintaining her paralegal position during regular business hours. The cleaning work was physically demanding, but provided flexible scheduling and additional income that was essential for meeting her family's financial obligations. During her 3 years of cleaning offices at Titan Industries, Maria had observed the corporate culture, overheard business discussions, and developed insights into the company's operations that went far beyond what any executive would have expected from someone they considered intellectually inferior, based solely on her current employment. Her legal training had taught her to notice details, analyze complex information, and understand business relationships and regulatory requirements that were invisible to people without specialized education. While cleaning offices, she had inadvertently observed documents, overheard conversations, and witnessed business practices that her legal education allowed her to understand in ways that would have surprised the executives who assumed she was intellectually incapable of comprehending their work. On that Tuesday evening in November, Maria was following her usual routine of cleaning the executive floor offices after the business day had concluded and most employees had departed for their homes in affluent suburbs. The executive floor was always her most challenging cleaning assignment because of the expensive furnishings, delicate artwork, and sophisticated technology that required careful attention to avoid damage. The boardroom was typically her final stop each evening, requiring thorough cleaning of the mahogany conference table, leather chairs, and audiovisual equipment that executives used for important meetings with clients, investors, and business partners. The room's prestigious appearance was essential for maintaining Titan Industries' corporate image during high-stakes business negotiations. Maria was emptying the wastebaskets and cleaning the conference table when she heard voices in the corridor approaching the boardroom. Jonathan Pierce's distinctive voice was clearly audible as he discussed the Meridian merger with his legal team, expressing frustration about regulatory delays that were complicating the transaction timeline. "This regulatory review process is taking longer than expected," Jonathan was saying to his chief legal counsel, David Morrison, a partner at one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms. "The complexity of this merger agreement is beyond anything most people could comprehend. It's 800 pages of the most sophisticated corporate law imaginable." Maria continued her cleaning work quietly, while the legal team entered the boardroom, carrying multiple copies of documents, laptops, and briefcases that indicated they were preparing for an extended working session to address regulatory concerns and finalize merger documentation. The European Union regulators are asking for additional documentation about intellectual property transfers and employment protection guarantees, David explained while spreading documents across the conference table. They want assurance that the merger won't eliminate research and development positions or compromise innovation capabilities. Jonathan's response revealed his frustration with regulatory oversight that he viewed as unnecessary interference with business decisions that should be left to corporate executives who understood the complexities of international commerce and market dynamics. "These regulators act like they understand business better than we do," Jonathan complained while reviewing the merger documents. "They've probably never negotiated a complex international transaction or understood the legal intricacies that make these deals possible." It was at that moment that Jonathan noticed Maria's presence in the boardroom and seized upon an opportunity to demonstrate his intellectual superiority and express his contempt for regulatory oversight through a demonstration that would prove his point about the intellectual divide between corporate executives and ordinary workers. "Perfect timing," Jonathan announced to his legal team, while gesturing toward Maria with obvious condescension. "Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This merger document is so complex that if anyone in this building can actually read and understand all 800 pages, I'll personally give them $1 billion. His laughter was loud and dismissive, intended to entertain his legal colleagues, while reinforcing his belief that intellectual capability was naturally distributed along class and educational lines. The suggestion that a cleaning lady could comprehend sophisticated legal documents was, in his mind, absurdly impossible, and therefore safe for making dramatic financial promises. "These people can barely read a street sign, let alone corporate law," Jonathan continued, his voice carrying the condescension that characterized his interactions with service employees whom he considered intellectually inferior. "Go ahead, try to read it," he said directly to Maria, while pointing at the merger agreement with obvious mockery. "I'll wait." The legal team joined Jonathan's laughter, viewing the demonstration as harmless entertainment that confirmed their shared assumptions about intellectual hierarchy and educational achievement. None of them considered the possibility that their assumptions might be incorrect or that their prejudices might be about to cost their client an enormous amount of money. Maria paused in her cleaning work and looked at Jonathan with calm professionalism, recognizing an opportunity that had been presented by his arrogance and ignorance about her qualifications and capabilities. She understood that his offer, though made mockingly, constituted a binding verbal contract that could be legally enforceable under certain circumstances. "Are you said $1 billion if I can read and understand this document?" Maria asked quietly, her voice carrying none of the deference that Jonathan expected from service employees who should naturally recognize their intellectual inferiority. "That's right," Jonathan replied with continued laughter, completely confident that he was safe from any financial obligation because he was certain that Maria lacked the educational background and intellectual capability to comprehend legal documents of such complexity. "And your legal team here can serve as witnesses to your offer," Maria continued, her legal training automatically analyzing the elements necessary to establish a binding contract, offer, acceptance, consideration, and witnesses who could verify the terms of the agreement. David Morrison and the other attorneys found Maria's questions amusing rather than concerning, viewing her apparent seriousness about the challenge as evidence of the intellectual pretension that characterized people who didn't understand their own limitations. They nodded their agreement to serve as witnesses, treating the entire interaction as entertainment rather than a potential legal obligation. "Absolutely," Jonathan confirmed with supreme confidence. "My entire legal team can witness this ridiculous proposition. When you give up after the first page, maybe you'll understand why some people are executives and others are cleaning ladies." Maria set down her cleaning supplies and approached the conference table where the merger agreement was displayed, its 847 pages representing one of the most complex legal documents that had been prepared for any corporate transaction that year. Jonathan and his legal team settled into their chairs, expecting to watch Maria struggle with basic legal terminology for a few minutes before giving up in frustration and acknowledging her intellectual inadequacy. They viewed the demonstration as a useful lesson about educational achievement and intellectual capability that would confirm their shared assumptions about class and intelligence. But as Maria picked up the first volume of the merger agreement and began reading, something extraordinary happened. Instead of the confused stumbling that Jonathan expected, Maria read with obvious fluency and comprehension, her eyes moving across the pages with the practiced efficiency of someone who was thoroughly familiar with complex legal documents. Her reading pace was faster than that of most practicing attorneys, and her occasional nods and thoughtful expressions indicated that she was not just decoding words, but understanding concepts, legal relationships, and implications that required sophisticated legal education to comprehend fully. After 15 minutes of watching Maria read with obvious competence, Jonathan's laughter had died completely, replaced by growing concern that his arrogant demonstration might not be proceeding according to his expectations. The legal team also recognized that something unexpected was happening, though they couldn't immediately understand how a cleaning lady was displaying such obvious familiarity with complex legal concepts. "She's actually reading it," David whispered to Jonathan, his voice carrying surprise and growing alarm as he realized that their assumption about Maria's capabilities might have been dramatically incorrect. Maria continued reading steadily through the merger agreement, occasionally asking clarifying questions about specific clauses that demonstrated not ignorance, but sophisticated understanding of legal nuances that most people would never notice or comprehend. Section 47 references intellectual property warranties that seem inconsistent with the liability allocation provisions in Section 112, Maria observed while continuing to read. "Is this intentional, or should these sections be harmonized to avoid potential conflicts during dispute resolution?" The question demonstrated legal analysis that went beyond simple reading comprehension to sophisticated understanding of how different contract provisions related to each other and could create problems during implementation or enforcement. Jonathan and his legal team exchanged glances of growing alarm as they realized that Maria's legal knowledge appeared to be genuine and extensive. For the next hour, Maria continued reading through the merger agreement, while Jonathan and his lawyers watched in stunned silence as their assumptions about intelligence, education, and social hierarchy were systematically demolished by a cleaning lady who was demonstrating legal expertise that equaled or exceeded their own. Maria's questions and observations throughout her reading demonstrated not just comprehension, but sophisticated analysis that reflected advanced legal education and professional competence. She identified potential regulatory compliance issues, noted inconsistencies between different sections, and suggested modifications that would strengthen the agreement's enforceability. The environmental liability provisions in Section 238 might not satisfy European Union requirements, Maria noted, while reviewing the relevant documentation. The language about successor liability could be interpreted more broadly by EU regulators than by American courts, potentially creating compliance issues that could delay or prevent regulatory approval. Oisa, her analysis was precisely the kind of sophisticated legal reasoning that Titan Industries was paying David Morrison's law firm hundreds of thousands of dollars to provide, and her insights were demonstrating expertise that would have been valuable for improving the merger agreement's legal strength and regulatory compliance. As Maria approached the final sections of the merger agreement, Jonathan was experiencing a growing sense of panic as he realized that his arrogant challenge was about to cost him personally $1 billion, an amount that would represent a significant portion of his personal wealth and corporate holdings. "This can't be happening," Jonathan whispered to David, his voice carrying desperation as he contemplated the financial catastrophe that his prejudice and arrogance had created. "She's actually going to finish reading the entire document. How is this possible?" David was equally stunned by Maria's performance, recognizing that her legal analysis was demonstrating knowledge and expertise that typically required years of specialized education and professional experience to develop. "Jonathan, I think we seriously underestimated this woman's background and qualifications." When Maria finally closed the merger agreement after reading all 847 pages, she looked up at Jonathan with calm professionalism that contrasted sharply with his obvious distress and panic about the financial obligation he had created through his arrogant assumptions. "You said $1 billion, sir," Maria said calmly, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had just demonstrated intellectual capability that shattered every assumption that Jonathan had made about intelligence, education, and social hierarchy. "I'll take that contract now." The silence that followed Maria's completion of the merger agreement was deafening and uncomfortable for everyone in the boardroom except Maria herself, who waited patiently for Jonathan to acknowledge her successful completion of his challenge and fulfill his financial commitment. Jonathan's face had turned pale as he contemplated the magnitude of his financial obligation and the complete destruction of his worldview about intelligence, capability, and social hierarchy. $1 billion represented approximately 25% of his personal net worth, an amount that would fundamentally change his financial position and force him to liquidate significant assets to fulfill his obligation. "This is impossible," Jonathan said weakly, his voice barely audible as he struggled to comprehend how his arrogant demonstration had backfired so completely. How could a cleaning lady understand complex corporate law better than most practicing attorneys? Maria's response was measured and professional, reflecting the dignity and composure that had characterized her approach to every challenge throughout her educational and professional life. "Mr. Pierce, I graduated magna cum laude from Harvard Law School 8 years ago with concentrations in corporate law, international business transactions, and securities regulation," Maria explained calmly. "I've been working as a cleaning lady to support my family's medical expenses and my brother's medical school education, but my legal education and expertise haven't changed." The revelation hit Jonathan and his legal team like a physical blow, forcing them to confront the reality that their assumptions about intelligence and social status had been fundamentally wrong and had now created a legally binding financial obligation of extraordinary magnitude. David Morrison, as the senior attorney present, immediately understood the legal implications of what had occurred. Jonathan had made a specific offer in the presence of multiple witnesses. Maria had accepted the challenge and performed exactly as specified, and all elements necessary for a binding contract were present and verifiable. "Jonathan, legally speaking, you have a serious problem," David whispered urgently, while Maria waited patiently for acknowledgement of her successful performance. "Your offer was specific. She accepted and performed. We all witnessed the agreement, and the consideration was clearly stated. This is a binding contract." But Jonathan was still struggling to accept the reality that his prejudices had created a financial catastrophe that would fundamentally change his life and force him to acknowledge that his assumptions about intelligence and social hierarchy had been completely wrong. "Maybe we can argue that it was just a joke, not a serious offer," Jonathan suggested desperately, grasping for any legal strategy that might protect him from the consequences of his arrogance. Maria's legal training allowed her to address Jonathan's desperate suggestions with professional competence that demonstrated why she had been among the top students at Harvard Law School. "Mr. Pierce, your offer was made seriously in a business context, with specific terms clearly stated, in the presence of your legal counsel, who could verify your intent and capacity to make such an offer," Maria explained with the precision that characterized excellent legal analysis. "The fact that you assumed I couldn't perform doesn't invalidate the contract or demonstrate that your offer wasn't genuine." David Morrison confirmed Maria's legal analysis, recognizing that any attempt to void the contract would likely fail in court and would create additional legal complications that could damage Jonathan's reputation and business relationships. "She's absolutely right, Jonathan," David admitted reluctantly. "Your offer was clear, specific, and made in circumstances that would indicate serious business intent. The presence of legal counsel actually strengthens the argument that this was a binding agreement rather than casual conversation." Jonathan realized that he was trapped by his own arrogance and prejudice, facing a financial obligation that had been created by his assumption that intelligence and education were naturally distributed along class lines and that service workers were inherently intellectually inferior. But Maria's next words offered an unexpected opportunity for resolution that reflected her character and priorities rather than vindictive satisfaction at Jonathan's predicament. "Mr. Pierce, I don't need $1 billion for personal enrichment," Maria said thoughtfully, "but I would like to propose an alternative arrangement that could fulfill your obligation while creating positive outcomes for many people who face the same challenges that led me to cleaning work despite my education." Jonathan listened with desperate attention to any proposal that might reduce his financial obligation while allowing him to avoid the complete liquidation of assets that fulfilling the original contract would require. "What kind of alternative arrangement?" Jonathan asked, his voice carrying hope that Maria might offer terms that would be less financially catastrophic than the full billion-dollar payment. Maria's proposal demonstrated the values and priorities that had motivated her educational achievements and career decisions, focusing on creating opportunities for others rather than personal financial gain. "I propose that you establish a billion-dollar foundation dedicated to providing educational opportunities for people from underserved communities who have the intellectual capability but lack the financial resources to pursue advanced education," Maria explained. "The foundation would provide scholarships, support services, and career development programs that would help people achieve their educational potential regardless of their current economic circumstances." The proposal offered Jonathan an opportunity to fulfill his financial obligation while creating positive social impact that could partially redeem his reputation and demonstrate commitment to the values that his original prejudice had violated. Jonathan considered the proposal carefully, recognizing that establishing the foundation would still require a massive financial commitment, but would provide better long-term value than a direct payment to Maria and would create opportunities for him to be seen as a philanthropic leader, rather than just someone who had been forced to pay for his prejudices. "You would be willing to accept foundation establishment instead of direct payment?" Jonathan asked, still amazed by Maria's generosity and commitment to helping others despite her own financial needs and the humiliation she had experienced. "Yes, with the condition that I would serve as the foundation's executive director and have authority to establish policies and programs that ensure the funds are used effectively to create genuine opportunities for qualified people from underserved communities," Maria replied. The condition was reasonable and would provide Maria with professional opportunities that matched her educational qualifications while ensuring that the foundation's resources would be managed by someone who understood both the challenges faced by underserved communities and the educational pathways that could lead to professional success. Jonathan realized that Maria's proposal offered him an opportunity to transform his humiliation into positive social impact while acknowledging his obligation and demonstrating commitment to correcting the prejudices that had created the situation. "I accept your alternative proposal," Jonathan announced formally to his legal team and Maria. "Titan Industries will establish a $1 billion educational foundation with you as executive director, dedicated to providing advanced educational opportunities for qualified people from underserved communities." The establishment of the Santos Educational Excellence Foundation marked the beginning of a transformation that extended far beyond the financial settlement of Jonathan's contractual obligation to include fundamental changes in corporate culture, educational opportunity, and social recognition of intellectual capability regardless of economic circumstances. Maria's transition from cleaning lady to foundation executive director represented more than just career advancement. It symbolized the potential for social mobility and professional recognition when intelligence and education were valued over superficial assumptions about class and capability. The Foundation's initial programs focused on identifying and supporting exceptional students from low-income communities who had demonstrated academic excellence despite limited resources and educational opportunities. The selection criteria emphasized intellectual potential, academic achievement, and commitment to using advanced education for community service rather than just personal advancement. Scholarship programs provided full funding for undergraduate and graduate education at top-tier universities, including not just tuition coverage, but also living expenses, books, technology, and support services that addressed the comprehensive needs of students who were the first in their families to attend college. Professional development programs connected scholarship recipients with mentors, internship opportunities, and career guidance that helped them navigate educational and professional environments where their backgrounds and experiences might be different from those of their classmates and colleagues. Research initiatives supported studies of educational access, social mobility, and the factors that prevented talented students from underserved communities from achieving their intellectual potential despite having capabilities equal to those of students from more affluent backgrounds. Maria's leadership of the Foundation combined her legal expertise, personal experience with educational and economic challenges, and commitment to social justice that had motivated her original decision to attend law school and pursue a career in public service. Within the first year of operation, the Santos Foundation had provided scholarships to over 200 students pursuing degrees in medicine, law, engineering, business, and other professional fields that required advanced education and offered opportunities for significant social impact. The Foundation's impact extended beyond individual scholarships to include policy advocacy for educational access, research on barriers to social mobility, and partnerships with universities and professional schools that were committed to increasing diversity and inclusion in their student bodies and faculty positions. Jonathan's involvement in the Foundation provided him with education about social inequality, educational barriers, and the waste of human potential that resulted from economic circumstances rather than intellectual capability. His personal transformation included recognition that his previous prejudices had been both morally wrong and economically inefficient. Maria has taught me that intelligence and capability are distributed throughout our society, regardless of economic background, Jonathan reflected during the Foundation's first annual report presentation. Our previous hiring and evaluation practices were ignoring enormous pools of talent simply because we confused social class with intellectual ability. The Foundation's success inspired other corporations to examine their own assumptions about talent identification, recruitment practices, and support for employees who might have exceptional capabilities that weren't immediately obvious due to educational or economic backgrounds. Titan Industries itself underwent significant cultural changes that included revised hiring practices, expanded educational support for existing employees, and recognition programs that valued intellectual contribution regardless of formal educational credentials or current job classifications. The company's human resources policies were modified to include educational assistance programs that supported employees who wanted to pursue advanced degrees or professional development, tuition reimbursement programs that encouraged continuing education, and promotion criteria that emphasized capability and performance rather than just formal educational backgrounds. Maria's story became a powerful example for other companies and organizations that were seeking to identify and develop talent from diverse backgrounds, demonstrating that exceptional capability could be found in unexpected places when employers were willing to look beyond superficial indicators of education and social status. The legal profession also benefited from Maria's example and the Foundation's programs, which supported law school scholarships for students from underserved communities who were committed to using their legal education for public service and social justice work. Maria eventually returned to legal practice through the Foundation's work, representing clients and causes that aligned with her values while maintaining her leadership role in educational philanthropy and social justice advocacy. Her legal practice focused on civil rights, educational access, and representing clients who had been discriminated against based on assumptions about their intelligence or capability rather than objective assessment of their qualifications and performance. The Santos Educational Excellence Foundation's impact rippled throughout American society, as its scholarship recipients graduated from prestigious universities and professional schools, entering careers in medicine, law, engineering, business, and public service that demonstrated the extraordinary potential that had been unlocked through educational opportunity and support. Dr. Carlos Mendoza, one of the Foundation's first scholarship recipients, completed his medical degree at Johns Hopkins and specialized in pediatric cardiology, returning to serve communities like the one where he had grown up and providing specialized medical care to children whose families couldn't afford private treatment. Attorney Lisa Chen graduated from Yale Law School with support from the Foundation and established a non-profit legal clinic that provided free legal services to immigrants, low-income families, and small businesses that needed legal representation but couldn't afford traditional law firm fees. Engineer Maria Rodriguez completed her doctorate at MIT and developed innovative technologies for renewable energy that were specifically designed to be affordable and accessible for communities with limited infrastructure and financial resources. Each success story demonstrated the return on investment that society gained when intelligent, motivated people received educational opportunities regardless of their economic backgrounds, validating Maria's vision for the Foundation and Jonathan's commitment to supporting social mobility through education. The Foundation's research initiatives also produced important insights about educational barriers, social mobility factors, and policy changes that could increase access to advanced education for qualified students from all economic backgrounds. Studies funded by the Foundation demonstrated that intellectual capability was indeed distributed throughout society regardless of economic circumstances, but that access to educational opportunities remained heavily influenced by family wealth, social connections, and geographical location. Policy recommendations developed through Foundation research influenced federal and state education funding formulas, university admission practices, and corporate recruitment strategies that had previously perpetuated educational and social inequality. The Foundation's advocacy work supported legislation that increased funding for education, provided tax incentives for businesses that supported educational programs, and created partnerships between universities and underserved communities that improved educational access and opportunity. Maria's personal story became a symbol of the potential for positive change when prejudices were confronted, assumptions were challenged, and systems were modified to recognize talent and capability regardless of superficial indicators of social status or economic background. Her speaking engagements at universities, corporate conferences, and policy forums shared insights about educational access, social mobility, and the importance of creating opportunities for people whose potential might not be immediately obvious to those who made hiring, admission, and funding decisions. Jonathan's transformation from prejudiced executive to educational philanthropist demonstrated the possibility for personal growth and positive change even among people whose previous attitudes had been problematic and harmful. His public speaking about the experience and his commitment to the Foundation's mission influenced other business leaders to examine their own assumptions and consider how their companies and personal philanthropic activities could support educational opportunity and social mobility. My encounter with Maria Santos taught me that my assumptions about intelligence and capability were not just morally wrong, but also economically foolish, Jonathan frequently told business audiences. We were ignoring enormous pools of talent because we confused social class with intellectual ability. The corporate culture changes at Titan Industries became a model for other companies seeking to improve diversity, inclusion, and talent development practices that could identify and develop exceptional employees regardless of their educational or economic backgrounds. Employee satisfaction surveys at Titan Industries showed significant improvement in workplace culture, professional development opportunities, and recognition for intellectual contribution rather than just formal credentials or social connections. The company's financial performance also improved as more diverse hiring practices and inclusive promotion policies brought new perspectives, innovative solutions, and enhanced problem-solving capabilities to business challenges that had previously been addressed from narrow viewpoints. 5 years after the establishment of the Santos Educational Excellence Foundation, its impact had grown far beyond the original billion-dollar endowment to include partnerships with major corporations, universities, and government agencies that shared its commitment to educational opportunity and social mobility. The Foundation's scholarship programs had supported over 2,000 students pursuing advanced degrees, with graduation rates that exceeded national averages and career outcomes that demonstrated the value of investing in intellectual potential, regardless of economic background. Corporate partnerships provided internship opportunities, mentorship programs, and career development support that helped scholarship recipients transition from academic achievement to professional success in fields where their backgrounds and experiences brought valuable perspectives to business challenges and social problems. University partnerships created pipeline programs that identified talented students in high schools, community colleges, and undergraduate programs, providing early intervention and support that increased their likelihood of successfully completing advanced degrees and pursuing meaningful careers. Government partnerships supported policy research and advocacy that influenced education funding, student aid programs, and regulatory policies that affected educational access and opportunity for students from all economic backgrounds. The Foundation's success attracted additional philanthropic support from other business leaders who were inspired by Maria's story and committed to supporting social mobility through educational opportunity. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and other prominent philanthropists became major supporters of the Foundation's mission, contributing additional funds and lending their influence to advocacy efforts that promoted educational access and opportunity. The Foundation's annual conference became one of the most important gatherings in American education, bringing together scholarship recipients, university leaders, corporate executives, and policymakers who shared commitment to educational excellence and social mobility. Maria's keynote speeches at these conferences inspired audiences with her personal story, while challenging them to examine their own assumptions about intelligence, capability, and the factors that determined educational and professional opportunity. My experience with Mr. Pierce demonstrated that prejudice and assumption can blind us to the extraordinary potential that exists throughout our society, Maria often told these audiences. But it also showed that positive change is possible when we're willing to confront our biases and commit to creating opportunities for everyone to achieve their intellectual potential. The Foundation's impact measurement studies documented significant returns on investment in terms of career outcomes for scholarship recipients, economic impact in communities where they lived and worked, and social benefits that resulted from having more diverse representation in professional fields that influenced policy and social conditions. Medical care in underserved communities improved as Foundation-supported physicians returned to serve the areas where they had grown up, bringing specialized knowledge and cultural competence that enhanced healthcare quality and accessibility. Legal services for low-income communities expanded as Foundation-supported attorneys established non-profit practices and provided representation for clients who had previously lacked access to quality legal counsel. Engineering and technology innovations addressed problems in infrastructure, renewable energy, and environmental protection that particularly affected low-income communities, demonstrating how educational investment could generate solutions to social and economic challenges. The Foundation's influence on corporate hiring practices, university admission policies, and government education programs created systemic changes that extended its impact far beyond the individuals who received direct scholarship support. Companies throughout the United States modified their recruitment and promotion practices to identify and develop talent from diverse backgrounds, recognizing that intellectual capability existed throughout society and that diverse perspectives enhanced business performance and innovation. Universities implemented programs that increased access for first-generation college students, provided comprehensive support services that addressed their unique challenges, and created inclusive environments that valued diverse backgrounds and experiences. Government education policies reflected Foundation research and advocacy that demonstrated the economic and social benefits of investing in educational opportunity for qualified students, regardless of their economic circumstances. Maria's personal journey from cleaning lady to Foundation executive director and respected leader in educational philanthropy represented more than just individual success. It embodied the potential for social transformation when barriers were removed and opportunities were created for people to achieve their intellectual potential. Her return to legal practice through the Foundation's advocacy work allowed her to use her Harvard Law School education for the public service purposes that had originally motivated her decision to attend law school, while also supporting her family's financial needs and her brother's medical education. Diego Santos completed his medical degree with support from Maria's foundation's salary and went on to specialize in pediatric medicine, eventually establishing a clinic in East Los Angeles that served the same community where he and Maria had grown up. Carlos Santos recovered from his cancer treatments and lived to see both of his children achieve their educational and professional goals, expressing pride in their accomplishments and gratitude for the sacrifices that had made their success possible. The Santos family's story became a powerful example of how educational investment in one person could create benefits that extended throughout families and communities, generating positive impacts that lasted for generations. Maria's speaking engagements and published articles about educational access, social mobility, and the importance of recognizing talent, regardless of economic background, influenced policy discussions and inspired other families to pursue educational opportunities despite financial challenges. Her testimony before congressional committees examining education funding and student aid programs provided compelling evidence about the economic and social returns on investment in educational opportunity for qualified students from all backgrounds. The memoir that Maria published about her experience became a bestseller that inspired readers, while providing insights about educational barriers, social prejudice, and the potential for positive change when assumptions were challenged and opportunities were created. Book proceeds were donated to the Foundation's scholarship programs, extending its impact and demonstrating Maria's continued commitment to helping others achieve educational success despite economic challenges. Maria's marriage to David Rodriguez, a Foundation-supported physician who had completed his medical training with scholarship assistance, represented the personal happiness that complemented her professional achievements and social impact. Their children grew up understanding the importance of education, social responsibility, and using their privileges and opportunities to help others achieve their potential, regardless of economic circumstances. The Rodriguez family's commitment to educational philanthropy continued Maria's legacy, while inspiring the next generation to maintain the values and priorities that had created positive change in so many lives. Jonathan Pierce's transformation from prejudiced executive to committed educational philanthropist represented the possibility for personal growth and positive change, even among people whose previous attitudes had been harmful and discriminatory. His continued leadership of Titan Industries incorporated the lessons he had learned from Maria about talent identification, social responsibility, and the business benefits of inclusive practices that recognized capability regardless of background. The company's success under his reformed leadership demonstrated that doing good and doing well were compatible goals that could be achieved simultaneously through enlightened business practices and social responsibility. Jonathan's speaking engagements at business conferences and leadership programs shared his experience with other executives who might be operating under similar assumptions about intelligence, capability, and social hierarchy. Maria Santos taught me that my prejudices were not just morally wrong, but also economically stupid, Jonathan frequently told business audiences. We were missing enormous opportunities to identify and develop talent because we confused social status with intellectual ability. His commitment to the Foundation's mission continued throughout his life, with estate planning that ensured its work would continue beyond his lifetime and influence future generations of students who needed educational opportunities and support. 10 years after Maria's encounter with Jonathan in the Titan Industries boardroom, the Santos Educational Excellence Foundation had become one of the most respected and effective educational philanthropies in America, with an endowment that had grown to over $3 billion through additional contributions and investment returns. The Foundation's impact could be measured not just in scholarship recipients and graduation rates, but in the transformation of social attitudes about intelligence, capability, and the factors that determined educational and professional opportunity. Medical schools throughout the country had increased enrollment of students from underserved communities, supported by Foundation scholarships and comprehensive support programs that addressed their unique challenges and prepared them for successful careers serving diverse patient populations. Law schools had similarly expanded access for first-generation college students who were committed to using their legal education for public service and social justice work that addressed systemic inequalities and protected the rights of vulnerable populations. Engineering and technology programs had attracted more diverse student bodies that brought different perspectives to innovation challenges and developed solutions that addressed problems affecting low-income communities and underserved populations. Business schools had modified their curricula and admission practices to include students whose backgrounds provided valuable insights about social responsibility, inclusive leadership, and sustainable business practices that created value for all stakeholders. The ripple effects of foundation-supported education extended throughout American society as scholarship recipients entered careers in medicine, law, engineering, business, education, and public service, where their expertise and perspectives contributed to solving complex social and economic problems. Healthcare quality improved in underserved communities as foundation-supported physicians brought specialized knowledge and cultural competence to areas that had previously lacked access to comprehensive medical care. Legal representation became more accessible for low-income families and marginalized communities as foundation-supported attorneys established non-profit practices and advocated for policy changes that protected civil rights and promoted social justice. Innovation in technology and engineering addressed infrastructure challenges, environmental problems, and economic development opportunities in communities that had been neglected by traditional market-driven research and development. Policy development benefited from diverse perspectives and community-based knowledge that foundation-supported graduates brought to government service, regulatory agencies, and non-profit organizations that influenced social and economic conditions. The Foundation's research initiatives continued to generate important insights about educational access, social mobility, and policy changes that could increase opportunity and reduce inequality in American society. Studies of scholarship recipient outcomes provided evidence about the return on investment in educational opportunity, demonstrating significant economic and social benefits that justified continued public and private support for educational access programs. Policy recommendations influenced federal and state education funding, student aid programs, university admission practices, and corporate recruitment strategies that had measurable impacts on educational access and social mobility. International recognition of the Foundation's success led to partnerships with educational organizations in other countries that were seeking to improve access and opportunity for talented students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. The Foundation's model was replicated in other nations, where educational access remained limited by economic factors, demonstrating that investment in human potential could generate positive returns regardless of national context or economic conditions. Maria's international speaking engagements shared insights about educational philanthropy, social mobility, and the importance of creating opportunities that recognize talent and capability regardless of economic circumstances. Her influence on global education policy demonstrated how individual experiences and local initiatives could generate broader social change that extended far beyond their original scope and geographic boundaries. Epilogue: The enduring lesson. The story of Maria Santos and Jonathan Pierce became more than just a personal transformation narrative. It evolved into a powerful example of how individual encounters could challenge systemic prejudices and create positive change that benefited entire communities and future generations. Their experience demonstrated that assumptions about intelligence and capability, based on economic status or social class, were not only morally wrong, but also economically inefficient, preventing society from identifying and developing talent that could contribute to innovation, problem-solving, and social progress. The Santos Educational Excellence Foundation's success provided compelling evidence that investment in educational opportunity generated significant returns in terms of individual achievement, community development, and social mobility that benefited society as a whole. Maria's journey from cleaning lady to foundation director illustrated the potential that existed throughout society when barriers were removed and opportunities were created for people to achieve their intellectual potential, regardless of their economic circumstances. Jonathan's transformation from prejudiced executive to committed philanthropist demonstrated that people could change their attitudes and behaviors when confronted with evidence that challenged their assumptions and prejudices. The Foundation's impact on thousands of scholarship recipients and their communities showed how educational investment could create positive change that extended far beyond individual beneficiaries to include families, neighborhoods, and entire regions that benefited from increased access to professional expertise and social leadership. The story's broader influence on corporate hiring practices, university admission policies, government education programs, and social attitudes about intelligence and capability created systemic changes that would continue to benefit future generations. Most importantly, the encounter between Maria and Jonathan reinforced the essential truth that human potential exists throughout society, regardless of economic background, and that creating opportunities for people to achieve their educational goals generates benefits that extend far beyond individual success, to include community development and social progress. The lesson that emerged from their experience was clear. Judging people based on superficial indicators of social status or economic circumstances prevents society from identifying and developing the talent necessary for addressing complex challenges and creating positive change. Maria Santos had proven that one person's courage to challenge assumptions and pursue opportunities could create transformative change that influenced thousands of lives and inspired broader social progress toward greater equality and justice. If this story touched you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments what part resonated most with you. Until next time.